let's get started. Quick intro here. My name is Joe Formica. I'm the design advocate here at Lyssna. And among the bunch of different things that I'm doing, one of my main goals is helping people be more successful with their user research initiatives, helping people be more successful with their user research initiatives through Lyssna. And I do that through hosting workshops, working one-on-one with some of our clients and users, and overall just creating things and pulling from a lot of my experience to help you guys not only be able to use the tool of Lyssna or learn new research methodologies, but really to put it into practice. As I mentioned, I've been a product designer and researcher for between 10 and 15 years, somewhere in there. And I've encountered a lot of the challenges that come up outside of the textbook research process, the things that you have to deal with, like getting buy-in and being short on resources and time. So we're going to bring a lot of that into the workshop today. And the goal is going to be for you guys to leave here not only with seeing some stuff that Lyssna can do, but more importantly, how to overcome some of the main challenges of a busy product designer who's trying to squeeze some research in and build a process for making some user or data informed decisions. Let's get started. So today in our workshop, getting started with user research for designers, we're going to look at how we can make research, and specifically using Lyssna, to make research more efficient, effective, and approachable, whether you're a researcher, a busy designer, or any of those in-between roles where you're trying to incorporate more research into your process. So this session is going to be all about finding really quick and focused ways to make better design decisions and practical ways to bring that research practice into the stuff that you're doing. Again, especially if you're short on time, resources, or buy-in. Getting back to the busy designer example, every designer that I know, at least every good designer that I know, knows that research and understanding your users matters, right? It's the backbone to a good product. But if you're in a role where you've got your hands full, you're pushing to design new features and pump things out, you have deadlines and requests from stakeholders or your team, it can feel hard to do that, right? You've got deadlines, you might not have a researcher on your team. Stakeholders might want decisions or new updates yesterday, answers now or yesterday. And I think for me personally, and tell me in the chat if you've experienced this, it's also can just be hard to know where to even start. If you're trying to get some research initiatives off the ground or build it into your process, it can feel overwhelming. And today's session is going to be about taking the starting steps to solving that, how to do fast, efficient, effective research that is going to fit into your workflow instead of acting like a roadblock or slowing it down. Okay, so that's the bad news or the challenges that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. The good news is that while research can be complex and long and time consuming and resource intensive and all of that stuff, it doesn't have to be, right? That's not a requirement for you to do effective research that's going to help improve your product. You don't need a 50 question interview study or weeks of synthesis. In some cases, you might need that, but there's a lot you can do before that's going to be easier to get started and work into your workflow. Research doesn't have to be a massive undertaking. There are a lot of effective studies that you can do and make decisions off of that are going to be a lot more approachable, efficient, and equally effective, really, in making good user-centric, and in some cases, business or product-centric design decisions. Okay, so more good news with that is Lyssna is really great for this. Like I said, I've been a freelance busy designer for years, and I started working at Lyssna less than a year ago, but I've used Lyssna, or Usability Hub as it formerly was called, for 10 years almost. And it was really my go-to for whenever I didn't have the resources or time or budget for full-on large-scale research initiatives. We're going to talk about some of the techniques and challenges, but I'm also going to highlight that with Lyssna and how it can really be a good tool to get started with some of the things that we're talking about, and a tool that I've used literally for 10 years for that. It has improved a lot since then, but a lot of the things that we'll be talking through today. All right, so here's the roadmap for today. We're going to walk through basically 3 practical ways to make research a part of your process, even if you're a busy, strapped for time designer. So we're going to cover all 3 of these with some examples, some challenges, take some questions on them. But these are the big ones, and a big 3 that are going to guide our workshop today. First is how to start small and focused so research doesn't feel overwhelming or something that's like too big to get up and running. Second one is one of the most common challenges that I've experienced in here with research, which is getting buy-in. And we're going to talk about how to get stakeholder buy-in on research, not by arguing for it or fighting for it, but by showing clear impact, right? Being able to say, hey, here is why this is important. This is why we need to do research, and not needing to make a huge case for it, but letting the results speak for themselves, and to relate that research to product decisions that stakeholders will care about. And finally, we're going to talk about how to build research into your everyday workflow in a simple, approachable way that hopefully you'll be able to take action on after this class. So for our project, our demo project, we're going to use a fictional product called CourseCraft, an online course builder and ecosystem. Think of something like, I don't know, a Teachable, Maven, Skillshare kind of thing. A light example, but we're going to talk through a couple different scenarios in this, look at a couple different tests for it, and see those 3 main tips that we're going to go through the lens of some example projects that are probably similar to stuff that you guys are working on or will work on in the future. So we're taking on the role of, let's say, design/busy design research team for this today. So let's start out with our first principle. Start small and focused. As I said, research doesn't have to be a huge, time-consuming, overwhelming initiative. And a lot of times the most useful studies are often the simplest ones. And to even go back a little further, the most useful studies are the ones that actually get launched, right? So if you're planning some huge, overwhelming study and it's tough to get buy-in, it's tough to get off the ground, and it never really goes anywhere, that's not going to help you improve your product much. So we're going to look at an example of a small focus study that leads to a clear, actionable outcome, all with the idea of giving you some thoughts on how you can apply this to your own work to get things off the ground and maybe simplify or shrink down the scope while still keeping the effectiveness of your research. So the challenge, as I said, research seems overwhelming, complex, slow, and hard to get off the ground. I know it can feel that way for me as the designer or the researcher. We'll get into stakeholder stuff, but I think even more so for your team or stakeholders or maybe product managers who are trying to roll out new features and continuously improve the product. Research can be a hard sell, right? It can feel like a roadblock or a detour or a step back, and something that might not be guaranteed to give you results. Again, to overcome that, we're going to look at some ways to start small and focused. All right, so this is our first scenario. We're going to start out with our example app here with CourseCraft. So I want you to imagine that we're redesigning the homepage and we're working on some messaging, and we've got a couple different directions for, let's say, our main headline hero section. So we have one version that we'll look at in a second that is aspirational. I know it's small to see that, but it says turn your passion into a thriving community of learners. And another one that's going to be a little bit more straightforward that I'll show you in a bit. I picked this as an example, a headline, hero section, messaging, because while it's a simple one, I know I've had been assigned to do stuff like this plenty of times. And also it's been one that, especially on the homepage, that can lead to a lot of flip-flopping, indecision, indecision, let's say, and something that can really hold up time if you're just relying on people's opinions or brainstorming as a team and not really getting those results from your users. So instead of debating which is a better headline or which is a better, clearer direction for messaging what CourseCraft does with this homepage, we're going to we ran a quick 5-second test. So a 5-second test on Lyssna is a study that I'll let you participate in a second, that shows someone a screen for 5 to, I believe, 20 seconds. You can make it, and then asks them some questions about it. So a 5-second test is a great type of study that you can run in Lyssna for exactly what we're talking about here. Clarity of messaging in just a couple seconds. Do people get the main point of what the product is, or in this case, what it does with this headline? So I'm just going to share this link in the chat. Let me pull this up real quick, and I'll walk you through it. So everyone just click on this and I want you to just do the study. It literally takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds to do the whole thing. But just to give you a sense of what this 5-second study looks like. Let me give everyone a minute for that. Click on the link. That will treat you like a participant for this study. Fill it out, give it a shot, and give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat when you're done. Martin's done. That was a true 5-second test. Sometimes I adjust it to like a 7 or 10 because 5 is really quick. But that was a true 5-second test. So you guys saw the homepage, saw it for 5 seconds. We're basically asked what to remember as much as you could from it, and then asked a couple questions about CourseCraft and what it does and who it's for. Now, it's a little biased because I just explained everything about what it's for in the intro to our project, but that's totally fine. I wanted you to just see what the test looks like and maybe think about some ways that you could apply it. Like I said, you could do it up to, I believe, 20 seconds, but the point is for it to be really quick. And that's something you can, without getting too deep into it, you can iterate on and see, like, is 5 seconds. I do just a little litmus test at the beginning and see if it's how quick it is or if they need a little more time. But the idea is for it to be fast and to get that first impression, really. All right, so most of you have done it. So let's go to the results. Now, like I said, I'm not going to look at the results from what you guys just filled out, since you had I completely biased you by introducing what the product is. But with some of the results when I ran this earlier with Lyssna participants without telling them what it was about, was that they weren't totally sure, in 5 seconds at least, what CourseCraft was. Some thought it was specifically for teachers, like in an academic setting. A lot of people said community builders, a coaching platform. So the idea was that in the 5-second test that we just ran, it didn't actually communicate what the product actually does. It was aspirational maybe, but wasn't super clear. So here is the redesign version that I created, a much clearer headline. Instead of build your community around XYZ or monetize your passion, I did something super simple based on that feedback. Everything you need to create and sell online courses. It adds context in the subheadline for new and experienced creators. And I tested this again using the exact same 5-second test. So this time, just updating it with this new headline that I created, and really no other tweaks from it to see if we had better or more accurate, let's say, answers to those questions on what CourseCraft is and who it's for. So I'll pull the results up here, and I can share these in the chat as well. And you should be able to access these results, but check them out. Let me know if that works for you, of sharing the results. And you'll see, I didn't show you all the results from the first one, but you'll see that, I don't know why there's so much scrolling, that in terms of the answers to the question, what do you think Coursecraft does? And who do you think Coursecraft is for? Check out those because they're a lot better for this version. I changed the headline, I ran the exact same test, and we're already seeing that if our goal is to decide on messaging and how we want to communicate what Coursecraft is and who it's for, that this second one tested a lot better in that quick 5-second test. Now, I want to clarify, I only tested this with 10 people, and it's just one quick study for this, right? It's one method of testing this out. But we can see that the results are better and that it was a much clearer, people had a much clearer understanding of what it was. So the takeaway that I want to show here is I kept it small on purpose, right? To start really small and focused. We just uncovered, at least to some degree, right, a better version or got some data and insights from users on a really important aspect of our site, which is the messaging on the homepage. Again, we could do more studies on this. We could recruit more participants through Lyssna or through our own audience. But in the small example that we saw, we took something like a homepage headline and messaging, something that could be debated endlessly, really, and we got some data on it without needing to do a massive interview study or a 3-month long, like detailed, complex research initiative. Just with testing some quick first impressions, we were able to make it or get some data to help us make a decision. And I'd say even more importantly than that, getting this off the ground and kind of making that shift from a bunch of opinions about how we should do our messaging into actually listening to our users and understanding what's clear to them and what headline best and most clearly describes the product and who it's for. So a little example there, a 5-second test, but many others you could do. But I think a good one to show how you can start small and focused, not biting off more than you can chew, but still getting some valuable insights that are going to help you make some decisions going forward. Were you guys able to see those results with that link? Now I'm like super extra conscious about sharing the right links and making sure everything's not on tab overload. All right, good. At least for Fabian. Nice. All right, so let's go on to our next one. So we started with our first, start small and focused, little studies you can launch, implement quickly that are going to give you some insights rather than turning it into an endless debate with your product team. Next one is, I'd say, the big one in a lot of cases, which is getting buy-in by showing the impact of research. The challenge here that is probably a familiar one, as I mentioned, for me and probably for a lot of you here, that you're trying to make research happen, right? But you're up against tight deadlines, maybe skeptical stakeholders, and it's hard to get that buy-in or the thumbs up to go and launch that research process. A lot of times, the way that researchers and designers talk about this is fighting for research. I know I've said it in a bunch of other workshops and videos and stuff where I've said it's an uphill battle to get buy-in for research. And this is a common challenge, but I want to reframe the solution a little bit with this example, that it's not about arguing, making a case for, fighting for research. Really, the best way to get buy-in for your research and to get things off the ground and get that acceptance for research among stakeholders in your team is to prove it, right? To show the value of research. And you can do that by tying your studies directly to outcomes that your team and especially maybe stakeholders already care about. Things like in this example, like conversion rates or engagement. So the idea is not to make a really good argument. It's to target your studies at things that are going to resonate with stakeholders and give them that aha moment where they're like, oh yeah, this is really good. We're struggling to make a decision on this. We're trying to boost our conversion rates. We're trying to reach these goals. I can see why this research thing that my designer's been bugging me about for months is actually a good path to get to that. So now we're going to look at our cards. You got a free preview of that a little bit earlier, but we're going to set up this scenario. At CourseCraft, we noticed that users, people who are, let's say, trying to take a class, are browsing through the course catalog, but they're not clicking through to learn more or to enroll. So we're seeing like a loose like drop-off rate here where we want people to obviously be enrolling in courses, but we're seeing a lot of browsing and not a lot of action. So I wanted to frame it this way because this is a scenario with metrics like that drop off that stakeholders are going to care about, right? Product managers, other people on your team who are the ones giving you the buy-in or not giving you the buy-in for research, they're going to care if there's something we can do about conversion rates and getting more people to sign up for classes or to help people choose the perfect class to sign up for on our platform, CourseCraft. So we wanted to, for this study, we see there's a drop off or indecision in people choosing courses, maybe a lower conversion rate. We wanted to figure out what's missing from these courses and specifically these cards that could help people make a confident choice. So we ran a quick design survey in Lyssna to learn a little bit more. A design survey is just one of the type of tests that you can run in Lyssna, and it's a really simple one. Basically, users are seeing a screen and then being asked a couple questions about it. So in this one, they're seeing those class cards and they're being asked, how helpful is this information in deciding which course to take? And then a follow-up question, what additional information would help you choose a course? So let me share the link to this one. Make sure it's the right one first. Perfect, got it. All right, so I'm going to share this in the chat. You guys can do this one as well. And this is where you're going to see the course cards. I don't know if it was the same one you saw last time, but you can pop that open. And you should be able to be a participant in this study. So it should look something like this. Thanks for participating in a short design study for CourseCraft. We're exploring ways to make it easier for users to learners to choose the right course. We're seeing our cards here, and the participant is getting a couple questions. Imagine you're interested in taking a course related to AI and design. Based on the information shown here, how helpful are these course cards in deciding which class to explore and enroll in? You can give it an answer here. And then please explain your answer. What information would make it easier for you to decide which class you'd want to explore or enroll in? So you can just put in any answers for this one. If you want to answer it honestly, go for it. If you want to just put some test dummy data in here, that's fine too. Again, just want to show you this so you can see the participant experience, how easy it is for them to leave feedback on this, and then we'll look at what we do with these results. Everyone's good. Cool, so let me give everyone a second to do that. And then we'll look at the results that I got before I shared it with you guys and the next step that we could do to show some impact and make it easier for people to choose a course. So take another minute there. Thumbs up, done. Sweet. Okay, so again, I'm going to share the results here before you guys, the results that I got before you guys took part in the study. But essentially, we had two follow-up questions, right? The first was how helpful were these cards in deciding on a class to look further into or to enroll in? And the average was a 3.2 out of 5. So that was not bad. but I would say probably room for improvement. That told us that like the content on these cards, I guess loosely, again, with a small sample size was fine, but maybe not, maybe there was more we could do to help people decide and to boost that conversion rate or that click through rate. The more important and more interesting responses and data that we got back from this study were the open-ended responses, where there was a pretty clear pattern. And I don't know the exact numbers in this breakdown, but one of the most common suggestions of things that would help them decide more was basically proof of quality. So in the results, there were a lot of things like I would want to see star ratings, I would want to see reviews, instructor credentials, number of students. They wanted to know that these weren't just like random courses and that other people had taken and trusted them. And as someone who takes a lot of online courses and has done so over the years, that would have been my response as well, to see some proof of the quality in there. So here's how I redesigned it. A quick redesign that I did in Figma Make in about 10 minutes, but good for the example. This is my updated version of those cards based on the feedback. So I took that into consideration, basically their confidence in the quality of the class. I added star ratings, I added the number of students who had taken it, and I also added instructor roles and credentials. So for this one, taught by Sarah Kim, lead product designer at Spotify. So the goal was to help to respond to that feedback and to help learners feel more confident in their choice. From there, we could compare the two with a preference test. Price, that was a big one. I I left, I knew someone was going to mention that, and I debated very hard to put that in or take it out. I have done that I left price out intentionally because when I've done studies in the past, especially for a workshop, like for a demonstration, it's been the hyper focused on in the responses. So yes, if I was really designing this product for Coursecraft, I would include prices in that. Before the demo that I wanted to show, I wanted to make sure that we got some different, didn't draw anyone's eye to just the price, although there were some mentions of it, and more kept it on like the content of the credibility of the class or the content of the card and what the class was about. And yes, the recording will be after. Okay, so let me share this preference test with you guys and you can do it. Let me make sure it's the right link again. Let's start here. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to share this link in the chat with everybody, and you will see a preference test, another study that you can run in Lyssna that is going to ask people to compare two options. In this case, our before with the cards that were stripped down and more focused on what you get in the class versus our new version that responded to feedback and had more content related to the star ratings, quality of the course, etc. So again, go ahead, click that study. That's the participant link. So you're acting as a tester for this one. Answer it however you want. But more importantly, again, just wanted to show you what the participant experience is like and how quick it can be to collect that data. So give me a thumbs up or a yes or some affirmative in the chat when you're done with that. I'll give you a couple minutes, and then we're going to look at the results and then go on to our last tip about making it stick and incorporating research into your process going forward. That's good. Nice. Okay, let's do. Sorry, let me share my screen again, and we'll go right back into it. Awesome. Okay, so these were the results. Again, I just did a quick study of this before you guys completed the study. There they are. And this was the breakdown here. We got 9 choosing our updated version B, and 1 person who liked those first class cards. Again, a small sample size here, but I wanted to show you the grand finale breakdown of this. There were also some pretty interesting answers in the follow-up questions. I'm not going to get too much into those, more so just focus on what we're looking at here, which is a really nice thing to see. But for me as a designer, if you're doing the this or that kind of study or flip-flopping on all these design decisions, to see something like this at the end, at least for me, is really satisfying, where it's okay, this is from users, this is based on their opinions, it's based on feedback that we got from another study, and it all comes down to one very nice looking, clear decision that we can make, which is that people preferred class cards B in the case of making what was more helpful for them in making a decision on on what course they wanted to take. So the takeaway here is that if people are having trouble deciding on a course, or they're not getting the information that they need, that's affecting something like conversion rates, enrollments. These are things that are high impact. These are things that are going to catch your stakeholders' ear if you're saying, hey, I know a test we can run to improve that. Did I freeze again? This is going to be an important metric for them. And in terms of our original point of showing the impact, right? This is going to be a really good way to get buy-in for research. It's not about making the most compelling argument or explaining the inner workings of a research study as much as it is saying, hey, that thing that you care about, our conversion rate, we ran a test to see why it's maybe low or why it's difficult for people to decide on a class. We got some feedback from them with the design study, and then we went head to head testing these A versus B, and we saw this. So in addition to the impact of this to make a decision that is going to improve something that your stakeholders care about, let's say in a conversion rate, just showing something like this from the results screen or sharing one of those results links is also going to be really compelling, right? Just being able to say, here is what we learned from real people. Here's what they preferred. That is going to be a really effective way, and more effective than any argument that you're going to make, in the importance of research, and something that's going to help build that buy-in and build that trust that the research that you're doing is actually leading to not only better product or design decisions, but to better outcomes like a conversion rate. So for this one, Ty, in terms of getting started with research for busy designers, the topic of our workshop, when you're choosing these research methods or studies that you want to go forward with, start small and focused. And in this last example, try to find opportunities where you can tie the outcome of that research to a decision or something impactful that your stakeholders are going to care about, and show them the value of the research that you're doing. All right, let's get into our last one here. We're going to go, this one's a little bit shorter, but I think it's valuable going forward. Building it into your process. I think the challenge here, again, just like all these others that I've felt quite often, is that research often feels like a sporadic one-off, especially if your time and resources are tight, right? You're like, okay, we can launch this one study. Something happens after, maybe you get some results and make a design decision from it. But I have felt very frequently, oh, I wish we could do a little more than that. Or the next time an opportunity to test comes around, we don't have the time or resources, but I wish we did. So this section is all about some lightweight and actionable ways that you can build research into part of your process as a designer. It's not a total organizational cultural shift around research. It can lead to that, but more importantly, some practical ways that you can make research less of like a one-off kind of spotty thing that you're doing, and build some frequency into it and some practice into it in a way that works with your design workflow and the other things that you're doing. Okay, so our last scenario here is CourseCraft is adding a new feature to automatically generate and send certificates of completions to students. So if you're an instructor on CourseCraft, you can create the setting that when someone finishes one of your classes, they'll get a nice, I don't know, PDF download, shareable course completion certificate that they can share and put out there. For this one, let's imagine we created this new feature and we have this whole dashboard here, right, for our instructors or course creators. And we want to just run a quick validation on where it should go, right? Where should we put this new feature in the navigation or in the dashboard that is going to be easy and intuitive for people to find and use, right, and turn on. So this one, I'm going to have you guys do your last study here. So let me pull this up. Here's the recruitment link. I'm going to put this in the chat, and you're going to see what a first click test looks like. So go ahead and click that. There's another quick one. Open it up, and you'll get the instructions you need. But basically, we're going to see where you think we should put this feature for turning on the option to send out course completion certificates. I'll give you a minute to do that. Give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know when you're done. And then we'll take a look at some of the results. Okay, so I want to give a shout out to our Lyssna's product team here. Almost every time I teach a workshop and I'm using Lyssna as a demo, there's a new feature that I really like. And I'm liking this one down here. New responses, 20 new responses, 21. These are all of your answers rolling in, telling me to refresh. So I don't know how new that is for our design and product team, but I like it. I'm going to refresh it and see how we're looking. And I'm going to share the results with you guys in the chat as well. Thumbs up here. Nice. Okay, and those are the results. Should be able to see those. Cool. So I know you guys are probably still finishing those. We still got some rolling in, which we'll see on our little thing at the bottom. Okay, so I'm seeing here, this is what the results look like for a first click test. Imagine you're the instructor for this course. You want to turn on a feature that automatically generates and sends certificates of completion to your students. Where would you click first to find this setting? So I'm seeing a bunch under course. It looks like in the course section, course settings tab over here. I'm also seeing some clicks on this heat map over the students section. Let's see, click map. And then we have some more sporadic ones over here, but I think definitely the majority of them in this course settings tab over here on the left. This is what a first click test looks like. Now you've seen it from the participant example and also the results here. And I don't know if we have a definitive answer on where this feature should go. I'd say if I had to pick, it's most weighted towards this course settings section, definitely. But the idea here in terms of working research into your process is this is something, a quick example of something that you could run every time you're like releasing a new feature or adding something new to a platform. There are a lot of other ways you could do this, but it could be, this test was extremely easy and simple to set up, right? I'm uploading a screenshot. I'm creating a first click test, which is already pre-made in Lyssna, and I'm getting some results back or some validation as to where is the most intuitive place for this feature to go. So in terms of building it into your process, this could be something that anytime you have a new feature or something else that's being included in the platform, and you wanted to test if people could find it, you could run something like a first click test. You could get a little bit more involved and do something like a card sort to understand maybe more detailed information architecture, tree tests. All of these things are available in Lyssna. But my main point is that this is something you could work into your process. Every time you're releasing something new or including it in the platform, run a quick test to see if it's intuitive as to where people would find it, if you're putting it in the right section, if it's named or categorized in a way that people understand. And while it's not maybe going to solve every single question that you have about the new feature, things that you would want answered, it's a small, simple, repeatable way that you could build some testing into your process and make sure that the things that you're releasing or validating, that they're easy to find, and correcting it if that's not the case. Let me see. I have a question from Irby. Does Lyssna offer eye tracking, heat maps? No, it doesn't offer eye tracking, heat maps, just click tracking. There are ways to do things like it doesn't offer eye tracking, just click tracking. But for heat maps, it's going to measure where you click. There are also things outside of a first click test, like a navigation test. So it's going to be based on where people are like navigating with their mouse or touching. But there are ways to see like behavior, but not specifically eye tracking. No. But it is a heat map as to where people's mouse are moving and where they're indicating their final click is. Cool. All right. We got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to wrap up, everybody. And let me get back to my main slides over here. Cool. So to just wrap that section up in terms of our grand scheme of getting back to getting started in user research as a busy designer, find those small wins and opportunities to build research into your process. If I use this as an example of launching a new feature and then launching a first click test as to where it should go, but I'm sure everyone here can think of things that you're doing frequently in your own roles. Maybe you're designing product pages. Maybe you're designing some kind of like in-app notification or alert pointing to a new feature. These are things that if you're designing them over and over again, you might be able to find ways to work in a quick test as part of the process. So rather than release a new feature and put it somewhere in the platform and launch it, working something in like a first click test that you can do quickly, you can get results in an hour. You could get 25 to 50 results to validate where it should go, and adding that in as a short but impactful middle ground to make sure that you're making the right decision and to build it into a repeatable task that you're doing. Every time you're releasing a new feature, you're running some kind of quick study to make sure that people know where to find it. All right, cool. Some key takeaways and next steps. Just to recap what we talked about here today before let you guys get out of here and enjoy the rest of your day or your evening. First challenge we looked at in getting started with user research is that it can seem overwhelming, complex, slow, and hard to get off the ground. The solution there, start small and focus. So in terms of what you take away from this workshop, if you're trying to incorporate research into your workflow, don't think about the grand scheme dream research initiative that's going to take 6 months. You can think about that, but in terms of actually what you want to get off the ground, try to think of something that's small and focused, like our homepage messaging study, something that you could test relatively quickly in Lyssna and get some clear, actionable answers on. That's going to help you build that momentum with your research. And while it might not answer everything, will certainly help get it off the ground. Next challenge, we talked about that it's hard to get research initiatives off the ground because of the buy-in stakeholder resources challenge. The solution there is to get buy-in, not by arguing for it or fighting for it, although you have to do a little bit of that, right? But by showing clear impact. Think about our cards example, something that's related to a conversion rate, to revenue, to things that stakeholders are going to care about. And think about the two studies that we did with the design survey and the preference test. Quick and simple, but are giving us clear direction on improving those cards and how we're displaying our classes, and probably improving the conversion rate or the confidence in the decision that a user is making. Those are things that your stakeholders are going to care about. And if you deliver a nice answer like that 90%, 10% thing showing a preference, that's going to help get that buy-in more than any well-crafted argument could. And finally, if research feels sporadic and one-off, especially when time and resources are tight, try to find some small opportunities to build it into your workflow. If there are repeatable things that you're designing for, if there are things that you want to test or want to think are important to validate over and over again, see if you can just pick one of those, right? And add this intermediary step of running a quick test on Lyssna. It could be a first click test like the one we just looked at, or it could be something, any of the other number of studies that you can run in Lyssna, like a quick preference test or 5-second test there. So again, whole idea here, not going for the grand plan right off the bat, but thinking of some little ways that you can work it into your process and be able to show some validation in the things that you're doing over and over again. All right, yes, Lyssna does do the recruiting of participants. All the recruiting that I did here today were self-recruited with a link. So when you recruit with Lyssna, you can, let me share this. When you recruit with Lyssna, you can either recruit with a link, which is what I just did and shared with all of you guys. So you can recruit participants by just sending out a link, or you can recruit from Lyssna's panel, which I don't want to get this number wrong, but it's, I think, 370,000 participants. Matt, if you're still here, help me out with that one. And they're real people. You can segment them by location, age, interests, all of this stuff, and submit an order, and the results will roll in very quickly. So yes, you can certainly order responses from the Lyssna panel and recruit. And we have a vast panel. So whatever like specifics or persona you're trying to recruit for, you're going to be able to find them in the Lyssna panel. And if you don't have your own audience to send it out to, then this is going to be, I'd say, the biggest time saver and efficiency factor in terms of getting your studies run. 700,000 now. Thank you, Matt. I knew you were on that. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Yes, around the world too. Last thing I want to shout out, I know we're at time here, are Lyssna templates. And I specifically want to shout out Megan, who's on my team here at Lyssna. Megan works, along with a lot of others, work on templates and creating them. I'm going to share this link in the chat. But Lyssna, where are these? So here, let me just share this one. So if you wanted to create a new project, let's call this a test. In Lyssna, you can create a study and you can do it from a template here. And I don't know how, I guess we have 56 templates. You could start with a blank test if you wanted to, but we create a lot, and Megan specifically does a great job of creating templates for frequently used or frequent questions, really research initiatives, track your brand awareness and impact, measure the feature satisfaction, test a marketing message. This is a 5-second test. I actually used this template for the one in today's workshop. In addition to everything that we talked about here of starting small and focused, leading with the impact of your research and finding some little ways to build it into your process. This is just another feature of Lyssna outside of the actual recruitment and studies that will help you get off the ground faster. This template library is very useful, and I would almost guarantee that you're going to find something in here that's going to give you a head start on the type of study that you're creating. We build these templates based on what our users are frequently testing out. And again, the idea is to give you a head start where you don't have to create everything from scratch, but you can get a nice, well-tested study up and running quickly and get some answers to those questions that you have. It's another good thing to check out as well. And I had a templates link, but I couldn't. You can do it just when you create a new study. All right, sweet. Thank you, everybody. Let me do a quick wrap up here. Thanks so much for joining today and for the good questions and study participation. I'm going to go check out those results from the ones that you guys participated in today. I'm going to share this link for some feedback in the chat. There's another Lyssna study, our last one of the day, I promise. but it's a quick feedback form that you can leave some feedback for me on. If you enjoyed this workshop, if you had things that that you would improve on it, or if you have suggestions for other things that you want to do in the future, take a second, leave me some feedback there. Obviously, as a design advocate for a user research platform, I read through all the feedback. I use it to create my workshops and make them better. So if you have anything you enjoyed or any ideas for improvement or things you want to learn next, go ahead and drop it in there. You can create your own templates. Yeah, you can do that. It doesn't add them directly as a template, but you can duplicate studies, you can create variation studies. So it's not called templates, but the idea of just replicating a study in your account and using a template that you create for multiple things or replacing something like the screenshot you're using. Yes, you can definitely do that. And I'm doing that all the time. And I imagine a lot of users on Lyssna are doing that as well. Cool. All right, let me wrap it up there since we're over on time here, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining. I hope this was helpful. I hope you've got your wheels turning on some ideas of how to incorporate some of this into your own work. If you're new to Lyssna, check it out. Go to lyssna.com and start a free trial. If you're familiar with Lyssna already and maybe not using it or thinking about how to get your research up and running, check it out. Check out some of those templates. And I would say most importantly, think about your own work and think about how you can get this stuff off the ground in a way where you can start small with some research initiatives that are less overwhelming, more approachable. Two, where you can show the impact and be able to get some answers on some questions that are going to help you get that buy-in and approval for your research. And three, thinking about some repeatable research that you can do, some little ways that you can work it in to your current workflow to build in some validation and customer feedback as you're juggling all the other stuff you're juggling as a busy designer. So I hope you take that away and find some ways to work that into your own workflow and to build some research into your process, or a little bit more maybe. Thank you so much again, everybody. Recording will be out right after this, and we got some new workshops launching soon for the next couple months. So I'll be sending out some info about those and hopefully see you there. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you soon.